It was a crisp autumn afternoon in a small town in Texas when an unusual scene unfolded at a prestigious estate auction. The grand hall was packed with wealthy collectors, eager bidders, and curious onlookers, all dressed in their finest attire. Among them stood an older man, his clothes simple and worn, a stark contrast to the lavish suits and elegant dresses surrounding him. As he stepped forward to register, a few sneering glances shot his way. The event staff, assuming he was out of place, exchanged doubtful looks. Within minutes, an attendant approached him with an apologetic but firm tone. "I'm sorry, sir, but this is a private event. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable elsewhere." Before he could explain himself, he was gently escorted out, much to the quiet amusement of some attendees. As the man walked out of the auction hall, he didn't argue or protest. Instead, he simply adjusted his worn-out coat and made his way toward a nearby bench, watching the grand event continue without him. Inside, the auctioneer was preparing to begin, announcing the first item, a rare, hand-carved wooden chest from the 19th century. Meanwhile, a local journalist covering the event had noticed the incident at the entrance. Curious, he stepped outside and approached the man. "Excuse me, sir. I couldn't help but notice what just happened. Were you here to bid?" he asked politely. The older man gave a small smile. "Yes, I was, but I suppose they didn't think I belonged in there." The journalist, sensing there was more to the story, pressed on. "If you don't mind me asking, what were you hoping to buy?" The man hesitated for a moment before answering. "The chest. It once belonged to my great-grandfather. I recognized it from an old family photo. I wanted to bring it back home." The journalist's eyes widened. This was no ordinary bidder. This was a man with a personal connection to the auctioned item. Determined to uncover more, he quickly took out his phone and began recording. Back inside, the bidding was heating up. Hands shot into the air as the price climbed higher and higher. But just as the auctioneer was about to finalize the sale, a sudden commotion erupted at the entrance. The journalist had just posted a short clip of his conversation with the man on social media, highlighting the unfair treatment he had received. Within minutes, the video began gaining traction, shared by local news outlets and even some attendees inside the auction hall. Meanwhile, inside, the auctioneer was about to finalize the sale of the chest when a sudden murmur spread through the crowd. A well-dressed woman in the front row glanced at her phone and gasped. "Is this true?" she whispered to the person next to her, showing them the video. More attendees started checking their phones, and whispers turned into concerned discussions. Then, one of the event organizers stepped up to the auctioneer and whispered something in his ear. He hesitated, then cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have an unusual situation," he announced. "It has come to our attention that this chest may have personal significance to someone who was turned away earlier today. Given these circumstances, we must reconsider how we proceed." A few people grumbled, but most watched with interest as security was instructed to bring the man back inside. Moments later, the modestly dressed man re-entered the hall, this time with the journalist at his side. His face showed no anger, only quiet determination. The auctioneer handed him a microphone. "Sir, would you like to tell us your story?" The room fell silent as the man took a deep breath and began to speak. "This chest belonged to my great-grandfather, Samuel Carter. He was a carpenter here in town over 100 years ago. After he passed, the family lost track of many of his belongings. When I saw the auction listing, I recognized it instantly. It was in an old photo my grandmother used to keep on the mantel. The audience listened intently, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats, realizing they had judged him too quickly. One bidder, who had placed a high bid on the chest, stood up and spoke. I was planning to buy it as an investment piece, but after hearing this, I think it belongs with you. A few others nodded in agreement. The auctioneer looked around the room. In light of this new information, does anyone object to withdrawing the item from sale and returning it to its rightful owner? Silence. Then, a slow clap began at the back of the room, growing into full applause. The man looked around, clearly moved. But just as he thought his journey was over, the auctioneer hesitated. Sir, we have a legal process to follow. The chest was consigned by a private seller. We'll need to confirm if they're willing to return it to you. The room held its breath. Would the owner be willing to let it go? The auctioneer signaled to one of the staff members, who quickly disappeared into a back room where the seller was waiting. The entire room was silent, all eyes on the stage. The man, now standing at the center of attention, held his breath. Would the seller allow him to reclaim his great-grandfather's chest, or would they insist on auctioning it off to the highest bidder? Minutes later, the staff member returned with a middle-aged man in a tailored suit. He had a neutral expression as he approached the auctioneer and whispered something in his ear. The auctioneer nodded and then turned to address the crowd. The current owner of the chest, Mr. Daniel Whitmore, has agreed to speak with the gentleman personally, he announced. The man looked up, meeting the seller's eyes. Mr. Whitmore extended a hand. Let's step outside for a moment, he said. The two men walked out of the auction hall, followed by the journalist who had first recorded the incident. Cameras were rolling as they sat across from each other in a quiet lounge area. I inherited the chest from my father, who was a collector, Mr. Whitmore explained. I never knew it had such deep personal significance to someone. The man nodded. My grandmother used to tell stories about it. She said my great-grandfather built it with his own hands. It was passed down through the family for years before it disappeared. Mr. Whitmore rubbed his chin. I'm not an unreasonable man. I listed it for auction because I didn't know its history. If it truly belongs to your family, I'd rather see it return home than sit in a collector's gallery. The man's heart pounded. Does that mean? I'll sell it to you for what I paid for it, Whitmore said. I won't make a profit, but I need to at least recover my investment. A wave of relief washed over him until he heard the number. It was a few $1,000s, far more than he had. His face fell. I appreciate that, but I don't have that kind of money, he admitted. Just then, the journalist, who had been quietly filming, spoke up. Sir, your story has gone viral, he said, showing his phone. People all over the country are moved by what happened to you. What if we start a fundraiser? I bet we could raise the money in no time. Whitmore crossed his arms. If you can get the amount by tomorrow, the chest is yours. The man swallowed hard. Could he really raise that much in just one day? The journalist turned back to his phone. Let's find out. The journalist wasted no time. He quickly wrote a heartfelt post explaining the man's story, attaching the now viral video clip. Let's help this man bring his great-grandfather's chest back home, he urged. including a link to a crowdfunding campaign. Within minutes, donations started rolling in. At first, they were small $5, $10, $20, but as the story spread, the numbers climbed. The auction attendees who had witnessed the event firsthand began contributing, some even sharing the link with their networks. Then, something unexpected happened. A local businessman, moved by the story, matched the next $1,000 in donations. A well-known antique collector tweeted about the fundraiser, bringing in an influx of support. Even a national news outlet picked up the story, driving thousands of people to the page. As the man sat outside the auction hall, his phone, one he barely used except for calls, buzzed continuously. The journalist grinned as he refreshed the donation page. "You're not going to believe this," he said, turning the screen toward him. The fundraiser had surpassed its goal in just 3 hours. The man blinked in disbelief. This can't be real." "It's real," the journalist said. "You're getting your family's chest back." Word spread quickly. When the auctioneer announced the fundraiser's success to the attendees inside, they erupted in applause. Even Mr. Whitmore, the seller, seemed genuinely pleased. Later that evening, in a small but emotional moment, Mr. Whitmore and the man met once again. This time, there was no hesitation as Whitmore extended his hand. "It's yours," he said simply. With slightly trembling fingers, the man unlocked the chest's old latch. Inside, beneath layers of cloth and dust, lay something unexpected: a bundle of yellowed papers and a small wooden box. He carefully unfolded one of the papers. It was a handwritten letter, signed by his great-grandfather. His breath caught. This wasn't just a piece of furniture. It was a part of his family's lost history. The room fell silent as he read the first few lines aloud. But what he read next would change everything. The man carefully unfolded the fragile letter, his hands steady despite the whirlwind of emotions rushing through him. The ink was faded, but the words were still legible. As he read aloud, the entire room listened in hushed anticipation. "To my son, if you are reading this, it means this chest has found its way back into the family. I built this with my own hands, not just as a piece of furniture, but as a place to hold our family's most cherished memories and a reminder of our humble beginnings. Inside, you will find a small wooden box. Open it and you will understand." The man's breath hitched as he looked down at the wooden box nestled inside the chest. His fingers trembled slightly as he lifted it out. It was heavier than expected, the wood worn smooth from years of handling. Slowly, he pried it open. Inside, wrapped in a piece of old cloth, was a collection of gold coins, an antique pocket watch, and a stack of neatly folded documents. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Someone whispered, "Is that real gold?" Ignoring the murmurs, the man carefully unfolded one of the documents. His eyes widened. It was an old property deed, signed in his great-grandfather's name. The address listed was one he didn't recognize, but the name on the deed was unmistakable. The journalist, still filming, leaned in. "What is it?" The man took a deep breath. "It's a deed to a piece of land my great-grandfather owned, but I don't know if it still belongs to our family." A man in the audience, who happened to be a local historian, stepped forward. "May I take a look?" He adjusted his glasses and examined the document carefully. "This is over 100 years old. But if no one ever claimed it or transferred ownership, it's possible the land is still in your family's name. The realization sent a wave of emotion through the man. He had come here expecting only to reclaim a chest filled with memories. Now, he might have just uncovered a long-lost inheritance. The journalist turned to him. There's only one way to find out. And with that, they set out to uncover the truth about the land his great-grandfather left behind, never expecting what they were about to discover next. The next morning, with the help of the journalist and the local historian, the man visited the county records office. Anxiously, he waited as an employee searched through digital and paper archives. After what felt like an eternity, she looked up. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "The land was never sold or transferred. Legally, it still belongs to the Carter family." The man felt his knees go weak. "You mean, it's mine?" The clerk nodded. "Yes, you'll need to go through some legal steps to claim it, but as of now, no one else owns it." With a mixture of disbelief and joy, he followed the historian's directions to the land's location. When he arrived, his breath caught in his throat. It wasn't just an empty plot. An old farmhouse stood there, weathered but still standing. Trees had grown wild around it, and the paint was peeling, but he could see the craftsmanship in the woodwork. The same craftsmanship his great-grandfather had put into the chest. Tears welled in his eyes. His family's history wasn't just a story passed down. It was here waiting for him all along. The journalist recorded as the man stepped onto the porch, running his fingers along the wood. "I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet," he admitted. "But I know one thing. I'm not letting it go again." The story, now national news, inspired thousands. Donations poured in from people wanting to help restore the home. Skilled craftsmen volunteered their time. Even those who had doubted him at the auction sent messages of support. Months later, the house stood tall once more, restored to its former beauty. The chest, now sitting in its rightful place inside, had brought more than memories. It had brought a family's legacy back to life. As the man stood on the porch, looking out over the land his great-grandfather had once walked, he smiled. He had come searching for a simple piece of the past. Instead, he had found a future. And for the first time in a long time, he truly felt at home.